Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's Better Buildings Alliance Renewables Integration Team call. This is Rose Langer from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. I'm the technical lead for this Better Buildings Alliance team. We have a really exciting call today talking about building to grid integration in the context of COVID-19. And we're going to be hearing from two great speakers today, including Krystal Maxwell from Guidehouse, formerly Navigant, and Wright from Aurora Public Schools in Colorado. So let's move to the next slide. For anybody new to this call, I want to just give a background on the Better Buildings Alliance and our Renewables Integration team. So the Better Buildings Alliance serves as a platform for commercial building owners, managers, and industry partners to share and deploy innovative, cost-effective, and energy-saving solutions, as well as connect to technical experts on particular topics around building energy. Next slide. The Renewables Integration team focuses on the strategic use of renewables in our commercial building stock, building load flexibility, and grid coordination to understand how our building stock can be managed or can become an asset to our power grid. And our aim is to provide resources, information, and guidance on these topics to you, the building owners and managers. We also look to our membership for input on possible research or resources needed to help make better decisions on these topics as well. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're always happy to engage on conversations within the Renewables Integration team focus. Next slide. So our agenda today, I'll do quick announcements and introductions to the call, and then I'll introduce our key presenters, Krystal Maxwell and Wright. And lastly, we'll leave some time for Q&A. All attendees are muted, so please type in your questions into the chat box and we'll get to them at the end of the call today. Next slide. So our renewables integration team has been supported by Theo Kasuga and Bill Getzler at Guidehouse. And Theo Kasuga has actually left Guidehouse to go on to other ventures in his life. And if you can advance one more, I have an animation. So I just wanted to say thank you to this team. They've been really helpful in helping me to manage this team over the past year and a half. Next slide. Moving forward, I am really excited to announce that my NREL colleague, Joyce Mclaren from our Integrated Application Center will be helping to co-lead this renewables integration team with me. Joyce has been at NREL since 2009, and she's worked on a variety of topics, including solar market analysis, residential and commercial solar and storage, electric transportation, and grid interactive buildings. She scopes and provides analyses and technical assistance to utilities and electric cooperatives, state energy offices, public utility commissions, and municipalities. And I should also note that Joyce has been very involved with one of our GEB working groups led by Nazio and NARIC that engages with state and local governments to promote GEB adoption. So really excited to have Joyce on the team. I'm sure you guys will all see some communication from her as we move forward. Next slide. And just a few announcements so we can move to the next one. I want to let you all know that Department of Energy just released a $65 million funding opportunity announcement for connected communities. And I'm just going to briefly talk about this, but a connected community is looking for, they're looking for a portfolio of buildings or a community of buildings that can enable load flexibility and connect, integrate into our grid in more meaningful ways that provide these grid services. So they have released this press release that I have a screenshot of on the screen here. And then they also, you can access the full funding opportunity announcement and application process on the DOE website. So just putting that out there in case you haven't heard of this large funding opportunity announcement that was just released. Next slide. Publication. So Department of Energy has a website or a GEB site where they host all of their DOE funded technical reports, other useful resources, presentations, etc. So I just want to put this website up there so that you all have that in your records. This is a great website to see just all the research that's been happening in the Grid Interactive Efficient Building site. Next slide. Additionally, if you've missed any of our past webinars or team calls, we have the Better Building Solution Center has now a web page dedicated to our webinars. So it's called the On Demand Better Buildings Webinars site. If you scroll down, it's organized alphabetically. So if you scroll down to Renewables Integration, you can access all of our past webinars that we've given. So if you've missed any or want to go back and revisit any of them, they're all located on this one on-demand webinars website. And typically I just search for this in my browser and it comes up as the first link. Okay, next slide. We'll move on to our introductions, and if you advance one more. So our two speakers today are Krystal Maxwell from Guidehouse and Craig Wright from Aurora Public Schools. So Krystal will be talking first. She's a senior research analyst with Guidehouse Insights, contributing to the lighting efficiency network buildings and building automation control solutions. She currently focuses on market analysis for the lighting sector in commercial and residential buildings, including emerging markets for lighting technologies, connected and smart lighting, Internet of Things for lighting, and lighting controls. Previously, Krystal was Guidehouse Insights Client Service Lead, facilitating communications and customer service with the group's global client base. And followed by Krystal will be Craig Wright. He is the Natural and Renewable Resources Manager at Aurora Public Schools in Aurora, Colorado. Overseeing the implementation of energy efficient technologies, he has successfully demonstrated innovative advances in automated utility bill processing, building automation system performance, and microgrid applications. Through his collaboration as a partner of the Better Buildings Challenge Energy Analytics campaign, he's also successfully deployed a district-wide analytics and fault detection system. Craig has a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering and master's in business administration from CU Boulder. So welcome, you guys. Thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to hear your presentations. And with that, we can advance the slide. I'd like to hand the microphone over to Krystal Maxwell at Guidehouse. So Krystal.
Thank you so much, Rose. Thank you everyone for joining. I'm really happy to be here today to talk to you about building to grid and some of the research that we've been doing and what we're kind of seeing going on right now with the coronavirus pandemic. So if we want to go to the next slide. I'm going to be talking to you today about building to grid and kind of industry transformation that we're seeing for flexible, integrated value generating resources as we define these B2G. And here's a little bit in the table of contents, just a brief overview of the key areas that I'm going to be talking to you all today about. So the role of buildings in a low carbon future, transforming buildings into flexible value generating resources, some of the impacts of the pandemic, positioning WIN customers in the B2G ecosystem, pathways to success, and then some concluding thoughts. I'm going to move to the next slide, please. So the climate crisis has really magnified the challenges of globalization. We're seeing rapid demographic shifts like population growth, urbanization, and the rise of the middle class, which is about 140 million people annually. All of this is compounded with the interdependence of technology, regional economics, and government. According to Guidehouse Insights Global Building Stock Database, worldwide an estimated 24 billion square feet of new commercial buildings is constructed annually. That's about the equivalent of about 9,000 new Empire State Buildings. And while the climate crisis has magnified the challenges of globalization with unprecedented weather events, global population migration, and uncertainty over energy reliability and resiliency, it has also showcased the benefits of future-ready digital buildings. We're seeing that buildings offer enormous opportunity for value creation in this new era of globalization. Next slide. The intelligent buildings market has already initiated the market transformation toward building to grid B2G. While the blueprint for B2G success has yet to be written, step changes in investment and services have really laid the groundwork for market leaders already. So we're seeing that digital transformation is already underway. Customers are realizing the benefits of digital technologies for optimizing their building system performance and are investing in these technologies today already. We're seeing robust markets that are showing investment in these enabling technologies. We see smart home and intelligent building solutions are providing the value propositions for digital buildings. And then the third piece in these step changes is how intelligent building solutions optimize operations and integrate with distributed energy resources, known as DERs, such as virtual power plants. Next slide, please. So we're seeing immediate business opportunities here already. B2G's success really relies on recurring engagement models that support customers through the journey. So Guidehouse expects continued interest in services really to fuel substantial investment over the next 1 to 2 decades across a wide variety of energy, technology, and service providers. New revenue streams from advisory and managed services represent a departure from this traditional product-centric business model, which is really key to the overall success of B2G and intelligent building solutions that we're seeing in the market already. So as seen here, new partner relationships can help customers through the B2G journey, kind of in 2 important roles. So first, this define and direct the B2G strategy. So this is convening stakeholders, creating marketing and education and outreach collateral, and executing partner training programs on IT and OT convergence and DER and buildings integration. And then secondly, here we see the need for accelerate the B2G implementation. So incentivize targeted investments, work with financial partners to educate and engage customers, promote grid service programs such as automated demand response, and direct rate structure innovations. So really another way to explore new business models to overcome barriers to investment, such as leasing or an as-a-service offering, which is a new kind of business model approach that we're seeing more and more of in the market as well. So next slide, please. Building owners can reduce energy and OpEx and can improve the perceptions and experience in commercial buildings by maximizing the efficiency of a building and by layering automation and controls with data-enabled smart solutions. So technology, service, and energy providers can offer new managed services that improve the experience within the building and improve the bottom line for owners while generating recurring revenue, all built around data generated by smart solutions. B2G is really enabled by a continuous process of investment as equipment turnover and technology innovation unfolds. So we're seeing that the returns really are best measured here with a strategic business lens that quantifies the hard numbers around energy cost savings, operational efficiencies, sustainability or carbon reduction targets, but also around qualitative metrics such as brand, satisfaction, and really ultimately productivity as well. Technology, service, and energy providers are offering solutions that prepare facilities to be flexible, value-generating resources, which is really how we're defining building to grid B2G. So the supplier or partner that supports customers through this ongoing process of improvement, which we've characterized as a B2G orchestrator, kind of seen here in the middle of this chart, will also benefit from competitive advantage as customers look for turnkey support throughout this journey. We can go to the next slide. So we're seeing an evolving reality for customers here. I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the impacts of the pandemic. The coronavirus pandemic has launched a new era of uncertainty. The sustained public health threats have destroyed paradigms for business as usual. In the built environment, customers are really challenged to new priorities for investment that help them overcome the barriers to reopening and address longstanding needs for facility improvement. But at the same time, opportunities have emerged to help building owners and tenants address longstanding investment needs, realities of the pandemic, and necessities for recovery. So legacy investment needs remain important. However, ranking and priority can kind of vary by the business at hand and the real-time impacts of major economic and social disruptions, such as the pandemic that we're seeing currently. So in any scenario of uncertainty, the network building ecosystem offers a common set of solutions that can meet recovery requirements. So that's kind of what we're seeing here with these legacy investment needs, they're all priorities, and this impacts from the economic recession that we're seeing, social distancing, work from home, and kind of these new recovery requirements that are taking place in the market today. If you want to go on to the next slide. So the network building ecosystem emerges kind of alongside innovation and enabling technologies from markets outside of legacy building technologies. The advancements in distributed energy resources, mobility, the electric grid, and cities really interact to deliver the greatest value to ecosystem stakeholders. So there's a universal opportunity that we're seeing in the development of these ecosystems associated with business model innovation, redefining asset ownership, financing, and ongoing managed and maintenance of these systems. So that's what you can see here from this graph, kind of the new views that we're seeing with buildings interacting with all of these other spaces as well. I'm going to go on to the next slide, please. The drivers, that were present prior to COVID-19 for B2G development are exacerbated by the pandemic. I think people are realizing this need to have future-proof digital buildings, and so we're seeing interest continued even despite financial challenges. Obviously, not saying these will happen tomorrow, but there is really a need, I think, for people to see this as a long-term goal and how to get there to have these future-proof buildings. So B2G development requires expertise across building systems and DER, systems integration, and IT that extend kind of beyond any traditional energy or technologies suppliers domain currently. To extend their offerings and skill sets in line with B2G technology, energy, and service providers will really need to determine their market entry strategy, and all of these have some pros and cons. So kind of the three that we have identified as entry pathways have been build, buy, or partner. And so just kind of going quickly through some of the pros and cons here. With build, you have the sole ownership and revenue retention. With buy, you're able to accelerate market entry with established complementary offerings, so a little quicker to market there. And with partnering, there's negotiation provides flexibility. But again, with all of these, there's some cons or things to keep in mind as well. So building requires either investment in new human capital or training existing staff, which can be challenging. Buying creates change management requirements, which can be really significant to integrate a new organization within an incumbent's business. And then partnering, negotiations around exclusivity can also threaten future market entry possibilities. So those are kind of the different ways that we see organizations are coming into this space. I'm going to move on to the next slide. So coordinating the process here. So we're seeing data-driven technology, has been deployed in buildings for decades. The advent of the smartphone really redefined customer demand for data-driven solutions in their personal lives, and we've seen this translated into an upward pressure across the buildings market for smart, connected solutions. The market transformation from intelligent buildings to B2G is about stacking the advanced technologies for automation and control to enable coordinated operations for energy flexibility, reliability, and decarbonization. So in other words, B2G will really be achieved when multiple solutions or services are delivered at the same time, rather than in a more traditional sequential approach. There is a compounding impact from the innovation of B2G as technologies and services are implemented in new ways, coordinated with existing systems, and leveraged for new business insight and occupant experience. So a couple examples I'm going to talk about highlight the development of intelligent building solutions that have really set the standard for this emerging market. So first is intelligent building software that enables HVAC system optimization for energy and operational efficiency. For more than 20 years, software vendors and building automation companies have offered facility operators the tools to monitor, report, and even direct automated improvement to HVAC operations. These solutions created the advent of the commercial intelligent buildings market, energy cost savings associated with better HVAC performance, such as occupancy directed settings or pre-cooling, delivered a really straightforward ROI. The sensors, controls, and software also became the foundation for new analytics around space use, occupant preferences, and maintenance, and repair strategies that deliver benefits to a broader set of building stakeholders. than the operator-centric use cases of traditional HVAC operations and maintenance. And then the second example is on the residential side. So we're really seeing that the smart home supersedes reactive home energy management strategies. In 2011, Nest Labs introduced its first generation learning thermostat, and the home energy management approach was transformed into a broader platform for achieving homeowner goals around technology-enabled convenience, sustainability, and comfort. Behavior modification programs and other traditional energy efficiency measures retain a huge market for demand-side management, but also behind the meter investment in smart technology is really driving this smart home market that we're seeing today. If you want to go to the next slide. So revenue generating services are a significant source of value creation for innovative suppliers engaging in the B2G ecosystem. The transformation of customer engagement from point solution and product sales to ongoing engagement models has a universal appeal by generating recurring revenue streams. And at the same time, it's also a way to continue to engage with customers, provide these more customized solutions, and build trust and really more of a partnership as well. B2G buildings will be characterized by ongoing improvements in energy efficiency, operational strategies driven by analytics, and comprehensive automation that enables actuating the facility as a grid or platform resource. So some new service opportunities for B2G assets can kind of be grouped into use cases by building segments. So the first one I'm going to touch on is energy resilience managed service for healthcare. So this segment really could be an approach to support hospitals as they face new pressures to guarantee uptime with the increasing frequency of intense storms and climate-related events. The healthcare industry really faces unprecedented pressure with the changing expectations for care and uncertainty of public policy. A B2G healthcare service could be a new way to outsource the energy monitoring, efficiency upgrades, equipment retrofits, and demand management. The next one here is commercial real estate service space as a service. So real estate managers must find new approaches to overcome the uncertainty of evolving tenant expectations for flexibility in leasing and space use. The convergence of co-working, short-term leasing, and density trends has created new challenges for traditional real estate business models. Solutions providers could help redefine office leases by leveraging space utilization analytics, automation and control technologies, and sustainability metrics that would garner premium rates. And then this third piece here I'm going to touch on is health as a service for schools. So this segment could help administrators leverage innovative air quality, lighting and climate control and automation, and analytics to deliver healthier classrooms for more successful students. So this managed service could help administrators roll out initiatives in a timelier approach than maybe the traditional bought-in strategies, and roll in energy efficiency measures and or distributed renewables such as on-site solar to overcome the significant challenge of deferred maintenance. Next slide. So the intelligent buildings market is breaking down silos between decision-making and systems operations within facilities. There's a leap to making orchestration between the facility, on-site energy and storage assets, and the grid a B2G reality. We're seeing energy technology and service providers are really tackling pragmatic technical and financial hurdles, but the bigger challenge is really in change management. B2G orchestration is a transformation in facility operations, energy management, and investment strategy. New approaches to decision-making, ongoing management, and development strategies are really necessary for both potential customers and B2G solution providers. And if we want to go on to the next slide, great. Oops. Okay, maybe next slide. Yep, thanks, sorry, I think I was one off there. So just want to kind of talk about some concluding thoughts here and summary, kind of key takeaways, I guess, for today. So The B2G platform will really lead to new revenue streams for energy, technology, and service providers willing to invest in strategy, product development, and market transformation efforts. Early adoption of key enabling technologies in the intelligent buildings and DER markets signify a growing readiness for B2G development. Ongoing investment in electrification and decarbonization will really help garner customer engagement for B2G as measures improve the occupant experience in buildings. Employees will be more comfortable, operations teams will improve repair and maintenance timeliness, and executives will really see stronger bottom lines through energy and operational efficiency. The most impactful advancements, however, we're seeing really begin with digital transformation. So implementing and using data-driven tools to optimize building systems and coordinate operations will really compound benefits for customers. So for example, intelligent building solutions give executives insights into space use, asset tracking, and operation and maintenance processes to support changes that deliver more robust financial returns. And as the journey continues, the efficient and sustainable buildings signify brand enhancement in terms of sustainability. So an increasingly important metric for attracting and retaining employees, customers, and satisfying shareholders. B2G development offers significant value to society at large. B2G enables energy flexibility and can support the utility grid integration of intermittent renewables and other DER. The ability to manage load in real time helps counter grid pressures during peak or severe weather events, all of which are expected to increase over time with climate change. I know we were just talking about all the fires happening right now, California, Colorado, right before this call. So we're seeing that that's gonna continue as well. So in addition, these flexible B2G energy assets can be community resources that can be leveraged during natural disasters. So uninterrupted healthcare during unprecedented weather events or following a hurricane, things like that, or fully powered backup shelters after floods. The revenue potential from a B2G advisory and managed service, we really see as enormous and driving interest in the market across a wide swath of energy technology and service providers as well. And becoming this B2G orchestrator, we see as really key and critical. This new market actor will convene partners and stakeholders and create and execute a B2G strategy, and we'll see the recurring revenue kind of from sustained customer engagement as shown kind of here on the slide as well. And that is the end of what I wanted to talk about today. So I'll hand that back over to Rose, or right over to Greg.
Yeah, thank you so much, Krystal. This is Rose. We really appreciate you sharing the work that Guidehouse has done in this space. I just want to remind everybody listening in that if you have any questions, please do type them into the chat box. We'd love to, we'll address them at the end of the call. We'd love to hear if you have any questions for Krystal. And I really do like pairing these webinars and having, some research-based presentations with what's happening in the industry itself. So our next presenter, Craig Wright from Aurora Public Schools, will give us more of a perspective of how he's seeing this integration of managing his buildings and managing them in a more flexible manner, but also in this time where we are amongst a pandemic. So I will hand the microphone over to Craig.
Thank you, Rose. Appreciate the introduction and the ability to participate in this presentation. And Krystal, I want to commend you for a great presentation. I found myself nodding assuredly that, yeah, that's the message that I certainly embrace and want to see proliferated in our school district. So thank you so much. Starting off with my first slide, please. So I'm with Aurora Public Schools, the Natural and Renewable Resources Manager, where every student shapes a successful future. That's our mission. We are in Aurora, Colorado, which is a large city bordering Denver directly to the east. And we have about 35,000 students that attend our school district. and 69% of which are on free or reduced lunch, which is an indicator that, you know, we're in a pretty low income community. And so we certainly have our challenges in maintaining our school districts, maintaining our buildings, making sure that, you know, we have good indoor air quality, as our tax base is not tremendous enough to, you know, provide the necessary services that we might be associated with more wealthy communities bordering Aurora. But Aurora is a great place. It's beautiful, and we hope you come visit. Next slide. So I want to just present just the overview of my presentation today, which will focus on selecting a single source of truth, which is a statement that our superintendent, Rico Munn, issued when we were first evaluating the opportunity to reopen schools. And we were looking at this as early as April, you know, or even March. You know, how are we going to get schools reopened? So I think that was a very important notion of Rico's to, you know, go by a single guide for how we will proceed in our actions to reopen schools, because as I'll share in a moment, we've been bombarded with recommendations and improvements to systems and run the whole gamut. Then I will talk about what our school district's efforts are in regard to managing buildings and the indoor air quality and ventilation through this pandemic. And I'll also touch upon what the implications are on future grid interactive, energy efficient buildings in light of not only the great progression that we're seeing in terms of Krystal's presentation to grid to building, or building to grid adoption, but also implications of what our perception of viruses and what I think will be an ongoing perception that will linger for the foreseeable future. So next slide, please. So as I mentioned earlier, our superintendent, Rico Munn, indicated we would adopt a single source of truth. And I really admire our superintendent. He's been a fantastic addition to our school district. And he started about 5 years ago and has done some remarkable turnaround for our district. He was named Superintendent of the Year in 2019 by our Colorado Council of School Districts, and is also a finalist for the Superintendent of the Year right now for the 2021 Council of the Great City Schools. So the single source of truth that he adopted was one that was published in June 2020 called COVID-19 Strategies for Schools, published by the Denver Metro Partnership for Health, which is a culmination of all of the health departments essentially within the Denver metro area. And it essentially ascribes the need to increase ventilation. And going back to Krystal's presentation about the pandemic's impact on optimizing ventilation, that was very much the emphasis in that publication, in which it stated to improve engineering controls to maximize air exchange rates. So that is you know, agreeing to fulfill that expectation is a commitment to spend more money on conditioning your buildings. In July 2020, schools and universities publication by the ASHRAE Epidemic Task Force stated further suggestions for improvement and enhanced air quality was to test and balance airflows and, quote, have system capacities reviewed by design professionals. So you might have thought, as I do, that, okay, well, from the June 2020 statement from the Denver Metro Partnership, that this was going to cost our districts some money. Well, certainly testing and balancing airflows and having capacities reviewed by design professionals is another significant increase in cost had we pursued it. Select filtration levels that are maximized for equipment capabilities. So there again is another cost recommendation, not a ventilation improvement, but now we're talking filtration. And if we're talking, in which case some sources have recommended going from, we currently use MERV 8 filters, going from that to MERV 13, MERV 14, or even HEPA grade filters, which when you do that, you have, a slight increase in load on equipment running to overcome that increased pressure drop. Whether the filters themselves and add increased pressure drop is up for debate, but certainly the speed at which they load with debris is more rapid, therefore requiring more filtration or more changes of those filters, which is an increased M&O cost. And then another recommendation out of that publication was monthly equipment checks. So we're already putting dollars upon dollars upon dollars to improve the indoor air quality of these schools. And they're all well-meaning publications. I would not be citing them if I didn't regard their advice as professional and very well informed. I just want to reemphasize how important it was for our superintendent to select a single source of truth. Because in September 2020, another publication, this time published by the Council of Great City Schools, titled Increasing Ventilation and Improving Air Quality in Schools, they cited that if MERV 13 filters cannot be installed, as was asserted in the prior assertion of ASHRAE's, then provide a recirculation fan filtration unit and duct it into the return of the units. Provide portable HEPA filtration, air ionization, and UV. So now we're just talking dollars upon dollars upon dollars. And so next slide, please. I'm so thankful for having just stuck to that Tri-County Health or the Denver Metro Partnership for Health publication, because it specifically states recommendations for ventilation. It's silent on filtration. And on October 5th, 2020, a scientific brief issued by the CDC called SARS-CoV-2 and potential airborne transmission. It quoted, "The epidemiology of the virus indicates that most infections are spread through close contact, not airborne transmission." And quote, "There is no evidence of efficient spread to people far away or who enter a space hours after an infectious person was there. And include inadequate ventilation." So there we are getting reinforcement of the need for ventilation, which in a moment, I'll explain how we're doing. And quote, at this time, there is no indication of general community need to use special engineering controls. And what are special engineering controls? Well, I regard them to be among them those referred to in the earlier Great City Schools publication, which is ionization, UV. There are other enhancements that I don't come to mind at the moment, but they have been marketed. We've been bombarded, as I'm sure of others on the phone call. And it just so happens that in April 2020, Norway issued a statement from its guideline indicating that referencing social distancing and hand washing, but no reference to ventilation. And it just seems like we are a little bit, we've pulled back a little bit from, we need to go all out to make sure we have the most sophisticated air handling systems, air conditioning systems, and that will destroy the virus. And it seems as though adequate ventilation will accomplish this. Next slide, please. So in regard to how our school district elected to reopen, and sadly we have been unable to reach an agreement about opening our schools to high school students. Right now, our elementary school students and middle school students are in class and attending class on a hybrid model, which is, I believe, 2 days a week for one cohort, 2 days a week for another cohort. You've heard these terms, I'm sure, throughout discussions and news stories and so on. But I wanted to highlight specifically how our school district and how many other school districts are making the decision about when to open the schools for full in-person learning. And Aurora Public Schools has used a point system. And I won't go into a lot of detail on this, but I thought it might be useful for those attending to understand specifically how a school district like Aurora Public Schools might make the decision objectively about when it's safe to reopen. So there are categories for what is Colorado's perceived level of risk. Is Colorado under a stay-at-home order? Is it safer at home, which allows business as usual to some extent? Are there health measures that indicate that the virus is on the rise? That's part of the scoring system. Has the school district adequately prepared itself for virus and attendance of potential infected students? And we have scoring criteria for that. So as you can see in the upper right, we have moved from a 15 to a 16, and there was some improvement, but we're now down as of today to 13. And unfortunately, that means that our high school students who had hoped to come back to school this week will not be able to. Next slide, please. So in regard to ventilation, a colleague of mine at Adams 12 School District up the road, Shannon Oliver, was so kind to share this with me that he had compiled with his team at their school district to identify specifically what are we going to communicate to our occupants, our teachers and students in regard to how much airflow are we going to be bringing in at various temperatures, because quite simply, our school district systems are not able to accommodate 100% outside air at temperatures below 20 degrees. So in this image, you can see that they've informed the public that they will have outside airflow of less than 50% at temperatures outside 95 degrees or higher, which would translate to hopefully an inside space temperature of 78. And then there are varying levels for varying outside air temperatures. And as for today, we'll be able to maintain, because we're in the 31 to 64 temperature range, we'll be able to maintain at or above 50% outside air and maintain an inside space temperature of 68 or higher. So there's, of course, some costs that you would attribute to this increased ventilation. And going to the next slide, I can discuss a little more how we intend to address this. So, perception is reality is a quote that was mentioned to me the other day, as it maybe was attributed to Abraham Lincoln, but I distinctly remember it being attributed to Yoda from Star Wars. But the reality is that we're not likely to see much change in behavior going forward in regard to perceptions of infection and potential infection promoting circumstances, and a much higher alertness about ventilation. And so what you see here is our pilot campus, our pilot project for a large campus within our portfolio of buildings. And the blue shaded areas are all solar PV arrays. The dense accumulation of blue solar is actually over our bus parking area. So we're intending to install a solar bus canopy with EV charging. Interestingly, each of these buildings has discrete solar arrays, which, if this were a traditional campus, you might presume that there's a more optimal method of deploying solar in more concentrated areas. But it just so happens that each of these buildings is powered is a discrete power load on our utility Xcel Energy system. And it just so happens that the layout of this seems to lend itself optimally to Xcel Energy's rate programs, the rate structures and incentives. And what we're piloting in the two schools on the lower part of the screen that have kind of a hodgepodge pattern of solar is a demand response solution whereby there will be information that is presented to the building a custodian or one of our HVAC technicians that's displayed on a phone through an app that informs them as the utility reaches a peak or indicates the need to curtail a peak, that there will be features listed in terms of what equipment, what systems to turn off one by one, how to shave the peak, or what to do to ensure that the solar is optimized at that time. Somewhat of a manual process, and we'll see how effective that is. And we're just hoping that the custodian or HVAC technician engages with that application. But what's interesting about that phone app is the phone app also has a COVID-19 list of actions as well. I mean, it could be related to any virus, come to think of it, in that if I'm at some point we'll have this virus under control, but there's, perception is reality again. What do we do when another virus emerges, or the SARS-CoV-2 is resurgent, and we need to prevent infection? Well, it now presents itself as somewhat of a need for an automated response to ensure that we have the ventilation controls in place to adequately assure occupants that they're in a safe environment. So that's kind of the merge of grid interactive buildings and in the realm of COVID-19. And I would just propose to Krystal one additional stack, number 7 stack I might recommend be added to your very effective presentation is the virus stack, being another variable that now needs to be brought into the realm of consideration. Thank you very much, and back to Rose.
Great, thank you so much, Craig. That just really insightful to hear what's happening in a real population of buildings in response to the pandemic. There's a lot of challenges there that you guys have overcome, and then tying it into how can we leverage these more flexible capabilities of our buildings, these more connected technologies to help inform our operation. So thank you so much for speaking about Aurora Public Schools. And just a reminder to our listeners, can you please type your questions in the chat box? We have a couple coming in here right now. And we have about 7 minutes for Q&A. So diving in, Krystal, this first question is for you from Wendy Guo. She says, thanks for the presentation. And also, what are the big challenges when talking about V2G integration? Is it more from the building side or the grid side?
Thanks, Rose, and thanks for the question, Wendy. I think there are challenges from both sides. Really, a lot of what we're seeing is just change in terms of processes, the change management, getting people to the table that are the correct decision makers, who's going to manage and operate systems as it's no longer as siloed systems that we're seeing. And so I think that's been a really big challenge that we've seen that needs to be addressed and is being addressed, but we continually need to see that to see more success for this.
Wonderful, thanks, Krystal. The next question is for you, Craig, from Tracy Wallace. So Craig, are you able to provide an overview of the financing for the pilot, the GEB pilot that you're involved in?
I would be happy to. We have a feasibility study that was recently prepared by a great consultant of ours, WSP, we hired, and I would be happy to share that feasibility study with her, and we'll soon be posting it publicly on our website.
Great, thanks so much, Craig. Another question for Krystal, in thinking through COVID specifically, and maybe this is for Craig too, what is the most impactful GEB measures or GEB attributes that can help inform building operation during the time of the pandemic?
Yeah, I can start and then Craig can add in. I think a lot of what we're seeing with B2G is that it isn't just one thing specifically. It varies depending on the building and the use case, and a school is going to have different requirements than an office building or a retail facility or warehouse. So I think looking at each different kind of vertical and seeing what is best there. So in an office, you know, we've heard of occupancy tracking as something within an intelligent building that's being useful to help with making sure that people are safe, and if someone's been in the office, you know who it is and can notify people if there is an outbreak reported, helping you know, different buildings manage their reliance on energy. So looking kind of just at the different areas, you know, clean air, as Craig has talked about, filtration that's necessary in schools, offices there as well. So I think there's a number of different areas. So not just one, I would say, for that. And Craig, I don't know if you had something else that if you wanted to add to that, how you guys looked at it first. I know it seems like a lot of it was from ventilation perspective, at least initially.
I think really it's summed up in one of your slides, Krystal, which was, you know, I quoted, it's a recurring engagement model that supports some customers through the journey. It's just so essential to get a good plan in place and be able to have folks that execute on that plan over and over, and the support needed to validate that their contributions are making a difference.
Wonderful, thank you both for that. And maybe one last question. Craig, with Aurora Public Schools and thinking through increasing your ventilation rates, are there particular sensors that you're using, and are you tracking the energy consumption to really understand how far you can push the OA into your space, into your buildings, but then managing your energy at the same time? Do you have software applications and sensors that are helping you determine those balance points?
So I wouldn't say that we have sensors so much that, like, we don't have CO2 sensors in every space or in every building. So, you know, certainly we are tracking what the increased ventilation is, how it's taxing our utility costs. And I expect it to be 20% increase on electricity and probably a 30 to 40% increase in natural gas. That said, there are controls to put in built in air handlers that will allow, according to ASHRAE, a facility to use return air, conditioned return air, as ventilation air. It will recategorize it as ventilation air. So look into that.
Wonderful, thanks so much. Let's go to the last slide here. We're just at the top of the hour. Thank you again to our presenters, Krystal and Craig, for your wonderful presentations. I think this was a really interesting webinar that we hosted today. And thank you to our audience for attending. If anybody has any questions about the work that we're doing, please feel free to email both myself and Joyce Mclaren. Also stay tuned for announcements on upcoming BBA Renewables Integration Team calls that I'll be sending out. Thanks everybody, have a great day.